Hello everyone, welcome back to Trek A Day, and I just finished watching about 10 minutes ago The Broken Circle, the Season 2 premiere of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Wanted to come on and give you just my quick gut reaction to the episode, and this is definitely spoiler territory, even though I won't be going through a step-by-step review of the whole episode. This is still definitely geared towards people who have already seen it, so come back after you've seen the episode. I haven't watched it yet, and I like going into these premieres avoiding as much as possible, aside from the occasional teaser. I don't look at the episode titles, I don't try and figure out or guess what's coming. I want to go in very, very fresh. So I had assumed that we were actually going to start the season off with Una's trial, that we got a few images of in those teaser trailers for the season coming up, and in fact we did not. There's actually very little of Pike or Number One in this opening episode, and I love that they did that. I'm pretty sure that's what episode 2 is going to be all about. But instead, we switch to Spock being pushed into the captain's chair and a focus on the rest of the crew. And why I say I love that they did that is because it really shows how they are willing to be very much an ensemble show and not focus just on the captain, really giving all the other members of the cast their time to shine and focusing on everyone pretty equally. I love that right off the bat, getting that, and I think that this was a brilliant setup for the rest of the season, because we get a continuation of some story threads from the end of last season, as well as some introduction of some new things that are coming about. So I think it did the job that it needed to do, and all around this episode, I think it might be my second favorite so far in Strange New Worlds. My number one will still be Children of the Comet from Season 1, just because for me that sticks closest to what I think of when I think of Star Trek, especially this kind of core Enterprise Star Trek. That exploration of space and new forms of life and discovery. So that episode still is, I think for me, the best example of that, and I really hope that the rest of the season continues with a lot more of that, but we'll get into that a little bit later. This is definitely a close second, though. I liked it that much. So instead of going to Una's trial right away, we get a continuation of La'an Noonien Singh's story from last season, as she is on an extended leave and sends a distress signal to the Enterprise while it is at space dock getting upgrades and repairs. Seems rather urgent. She is having trouble with Klingons. And right there you have me, because I love Klingons, one of my favorite things in Star Trek, so let's go. The problem is that they don't have permission to go and mount this rescue and figure out what is going on, so Spock and the gang have to steal the Enterprise. Another very TOS trope of things to do, and it was all handled very well, and that gives us our introduction of Carol Kane's new character coming in as the definite new chief engineer. And I was a little uncertain going in. I knew I was going to like her because she is a good actress in general, but I was uncertain where they were going to go with that character, how they were going to play it. But I'm glad they are seemingly going towards her strengths as an actress, and she's playing someone who's fascinating, a little bit kooky, and just I really enjoyed the little bit that we got with her. I think she's going to be hilarious and just a great fit for the group, so I really like her just from that bit that we saw. She was not in very much of this first episode, but I like her interactions and her teasing some ties to Spock's history. She definitely knows his mother, Amanda. So we'll see how that plays out. I really like the presentation of her character. The main thing is we go to a planet where La'an has found the family of the girl that she rescued, the survivor of the Gorn attack in Season 1, and it is on a planet that was a dilithium mining facility that had very heavy usage during the war, and now, since the war is over, profits have taken a plunge, and there is a group of Klingons who are trying to come up with a scheme to restart the war to reignite profits. and they have done so by hijacking and paying off and grabbing as much Federation technology as they can to be able to have a working Starfleet vessel and stage an attack on a Klingon vessel, thus igniting the war. It's a false flag operation they have going, and it is up to our crew of the Enterprise to put a stop to them. And the three parts that I really like about this episode, things that really stand out to me, are La'an showing right from the first time you see her why she's one of my two favorite characters so far in the show. She is just fantastic. I love her interactions. And when Nurse Chapel and Dr. Mbenga get separated and they have to escape a bunch of Klingons, and they have a lot of great moments without getting too much into every single detail. The one thing that I hope they don't just kind of leave and address again is they came up with a way that is at least plausible for them to handle this. You have, the doctor and then Nurse Christine Chapel, who's not exactly a big muscular individual, beating up Klingons, and at least they come up with a plausible way of making that work. Although I hope there's some sort of repercussion, some sort of setback to using this drug. Otherwise, it's kind of why don't we mass produce this thing and just give it to people in times of war? So I hope that's not just kind of a dropped thing. But otherwise, their interactions were fantastic. I love the way their characters played out through the scenario. And the other thing that really worked in this episode was Spock. Not only just a good performance, but I like what they're doing. There are a lot of moments, Spock's awkwardness with taking command, and you kind of see the growth of the character. I love the moments at the end where he has to negotiate with the Klingons. Just fantastic, and a lot of humor that didn't feel out of place. It felt like it really worked when it was humorous with Spock and some of his awkwardness in situations. And at first I was a little worried in some of the trailer and teaser stuff. They showed a lot of a very emotional Spock. And that is something that can go one of two ways. It can either be just completely seem out of place and not work, or if it's written well, it can be a great look at his internal struggle of being part human, being part Vulcan, being of two worlds. That's a huge part of that character. So if it's done well, it can really work. And I like how they're doing it, because I think as long as they keep the writing quality up throughout the rest of the season, it will play out fine, because it makes sense to where a lot of people think that Vulcans just are completely non-emotional, but in fact they're very emotional, and they work to suppress their emotions. And Spock in the last season had broken down that barrier he had put up, keeping those emotions in check, and he has to rework to regain that composure. He has to find his way back to the Spock that we would then know through Leonard Nimoy in the original series, and we'll get to see that journey and him dealing with these strong emotions in the meantime, and see that put together. So I think if it's handled well, that would be great. So overall, just a fantastic episode. That was a lot of fun. It had the perfect Star Trek balance of adventure and exploration, and the serious moments balanced with the humor and neither feeling out of place. It was an episode that had a lot of action, but it didn't feel overbearing, and that's one thing that I really hope continues moving forward through the rest of the season. I hope doesn't ever devolve into just being an action spectacle. I hope a lot of it is, again, a little more slow paced, a little more focused on the interactions and the drama between the characters, and a little bit more about the exploration elements. So that's one area where I hope it goes that way. We will see how that goes. The only other things looking to the rest of the season that are a little bit of a worry, and again, I'm really excited. I'm super into Strange New Worlds right now, really hoping, one of my big fears going in was that season 1 was going to be a fluke, that it worked and then would fall apart. There's always that worry, and what this did for me, this episode, was show that no, it wasn't a fluke. This is actually going to be really, really good and continue to be good, and I have a lot of faith in that. And the only two kind of oddball things that are a little bit worrying for the rest of the season are, one, we saw a good deal more of Kirk, that he is going to be a returning character, and that's a little bit worrying because I don't see the need to inject that character into this. You know, if you're going to make Pike's era of the Enterprise and that crew, make that and leave the other stuff alone. Like, focus on, if you're going to do the era leading up to Kirk, just do the era leading up to Kirk and kind of leave that character out of it. There's no real reason to. I think it just kind of takes away a little bit from this group if you inject him too much. I'm not sure how much he's going to be in. Definitely a time travel episode from what we were seeing, but hopefully he's not in too much, because I feel like that can be overdone and is not really needed. Like, leave this group alone. They're fantastic and they work well together, and let them shine in their own light and have their own moment and tell their own stories without relying on too much of things outside of that or things to come. And the other one is, I'm really uncertain about how it's going to turn out with the crossover episode they're doing with Lower Decks. I do know that Jonathan Frakes directed that episode, so that gives me some confidence, because I really like when he directs Star Trek. But we'll see, because going in knowing that it's going to, guaranteed it's going to be a comedy, obviously, that can go too far. And my worry is that it will go too far and just be completely off the walls and ridiculous. And I hope it doesn't go that crazy. I hope it toned down a little bit. So we'll see how that plays out. It could be fantastic. So we I don't know. Those are the only two things that really are kind of a little bit of a worry. That, and hoping it doesn't go too much into the action and war element, focusing on that, knowing that the Gorn are going to play a huge part in what's coming up. Hoping that a lot of it relies a lot on exploration and the relationships of characters. I hope that's where it's going, and though at this point I think it's going to be fantastic. What we've seen so far in this first episode I thought was brilliant, and it was a relief to know that it was good, to know that season 1 wasn't just kind of a one-off fluke. That I think going forward it is going to be fantastic, and I hope we get a lot more. And it's just really nice too to be in a place where I don't have to look outside of Star Trek to get my fix for new Star Trek, that I can do that within Star Trek and continue to do that. So I'm looking forward to the next episodes. The biggest compliment I can give to this episode is that as soon as it was over, it's like, man, I wish it was next Thursday already, because I want to see more. That's the biggest compliment you can give a show, is that you're just ready for the next episode, because it is so great. I love what they're doing, and I am very pleased with how Season 2 has begun.